Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Liners, episode 21. In our last episode, Scott Payne was with us from Shape, and he discussed what it has really changed or not within the outreach in the direct to consumer space and how product, AI innovation, and development will drive the future success. And I know my next guest will have a lot to say about that topic as well. So, but make sure, please, to catch episode 20 and previous episodes. Kind of to be stay in tune with my show and appreciate. I try to give a good pulse of the performance marketing space. Also, if you don't mind subscribing to and liking this video on YouTube, that would be great, as well as my Liner Connections LinkedIn page. It will help me continue to grow and expand my presence. So today we are going to talk to my good friend Nima Hakimi. Nima, say hello.
Hello, hello. I'm excited to be here, Joey. It's been a while since I've been wanting to get on here, so I'm excited.
I'm excited to have you too, brother. You and I go back to, and thank you for Nima just told me he just got back from a trip, so I really appreciate him joining me right fresh off his trip. Um, in the world we hustle and bustle and travel, so it's just I really appreciate you taking the time to come on with me here and join me for episode 21. But
Yeah,
Nima
all
and
good.
I go back. Yeah, Nima and I go way back. I would say I met Nima. We were on the board of directors at the Consumer Consent Council, previously known as Leads Council. We hit it off really well. I think we, as for those that don't really know the functions of the in and outs of performance marketing, essentially we're volunteering our time to try to work with a group of different individuals that are representing their companies, whether they're a lead supplier, a buyer, or a service provider, for really self governance within the performance marketing space and making sure that we're doing things the right way. And I'm sure we're gonna touch on that in today's episode. But um, Nima is just his story, his journey, is amazing. And I remember sitting down with him in a meeting right when I was kind of building out the start of Liner Connections, and he shared with me his story, and it took me back. There's some amazing uh, people and stories and inspirational movements within performance marketing. And the story of Nima and his business and Convoso is amazing. So I'm happy to have him here share that with us. So Nima, if you don't mind, uh, I remember you telling me when you really were down to like your last dollar, right? You had to borrow
Pretty
money
much.
to really go out and go out and live out your vision. So
Yeah,
yeah, tell us about how you got there, man.
yeah. So like, I'm gonna try to keep it as short as possible, given
Yeah.
that where I started from and where kind of that entrepreneurial spirit came from. Being in high school, I would say it started really being in high school. Growing up, moving from another country to the US, it was challenging to kind of just fit in and do all of that. So, my brother and I, Bobby, who was my business partner and co-founder in Convoso, he was always very computer savvy, tech savvy. In high school, we created websites, and I was selling candy just to make enough money to buy a computer. So just a whole lot of things behind that. But it was always like, what do we need to do to make things happen? Um,
That's awesome.
so I would buy candy wholesale, sell it, at school, make
I
up enough
love
money.
it.
And had several different types of businesses while in high school. Just as a high school kid, making money. It was fun, cool, exciting. Out of high school, we had a online ad network that was really successful.
Okay.
That was generating a lot of revenue. But I was about 18 or 19, generating millions of dollars at that age. We just were really successful at figuring that out. But we were young, inexperienced. It was an ad network where you would download a screensaver or something like that, and then you would get a toolbar attached to it. There's nothing wrong with doing that. I mean, Google does that. Everybody
Yeah.
else had done that back then. We
Right.
just were too young to understand what you can and can't do. It was something that I guess the FTC looked at it as deceptive advertising.
Uh,
So, to keep it very short in that sense, we just lost everything that we had made, every dollar. And you never want to go up against the FTC. You obviously want to, the lesson there is always have an attorney, make sure everything is looked at when it comes to how you do things in business so that you're protected, but you're also doing things the right way as best as possible. And we just didn't know any better, being young. And at the end of the day, we learned our lesson, but we were left with nothing. And so at that time, this was back in 2005, I want to say, we we were like, what are we going to do next? At that point in time, the business went to zero. It was closed down. There was nothing left, and we needed to figure things out. I was
yeah.
about 9 years old, and we had a cousin at the time who had a mortgage company, and he had telemarketers that were manually picking up the phone and calling their leads. Right, this is to the point where they still had printing things
Yes.
out and calling leads.
Exactly.
That's kind
I
of how
sold those.
so
Fax. We faxed them.
exactly, things like that. Until one day, I guess his IT manager came across an open source dialer, Vici dialer, which some might know,
Hmm.
and asked him to set it up. He couldn't figure it out. And then my cousin reached out to Bobby and my business partner and see if he could help him get it working.
Yeah.
Right. And at that time, voice over IP, making calls through your computer was just very new. I mean, people didn't even know what voice over IP was back then. This was like just the early stage when Vonage was the company that you knew when it comes to voice over IP.
Right.
So asked him to set it up, took about 3 months, got it working. And at that point, we're like, wow, this is cool technology. You can do this in a very cost efficient manner. You don't really need to have a lot of capital. Back then. You needed to purchase a dialer. It would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars if you had a large operation. So we then at that point we thought to ourselves, who do we know that can also take advantage of this type of a technology? And we had other friends that were in the mortgage, in that space at that time. And it was
Yeah.
actually called Mortgage Dialer. That was the first name. Mortgage Dialer was what it was called. I still remember it. And we tried getting customers any which way. I just
Yeah.
through just very hustling any which way we could imagine, finding customers online through message forums, message board, and
Yep.
just word of mouth started to spread. And then at that time, because we didn't have to build anything to some extent, we were just selling what the application could do and generating revenue, and it was doing really well for many years. But then the growth stalled because the product was buggy. It would crash. It would have
Mm.
outages, and everything was bootstrapped. We didn't have investors. We didn't have any money. Just kind
Right.
of just figuring it all out. And so yeah, it was a long journey of just going and going, and we tried to rebuild the platform multiple times. Really, at the core of it, the dialer, getting leads on the phone, is really what everybody cares about, right? And
Yeah.
so uptime is one of the most important, not only important, but if it's not working all the time, you're not going to use a dialer that has problems like that. I mean,
That's
we're
right.
talking about outages every single day. It was just challenges after challenges, and some of our customers that are still with us today, they know, 17 years later, uh, that what I mean, they lived through it all and they stayed
They
with
still
us.
let you know about it too.
Yeah,
They
I
still
mean,
remind you.
always, always, always. But
That's awesome,
essentially,
man.
and we rebuilt the product, and at the core of it, Convoso is a, contact center platform for performance marketing, and it really has a dialing component at the core
Yes.
of it. Before having explained it, I didn't explain it earlier, but that's what it does. And we finally rebuilt it in 2016. It was called SafeSoft Solutions. We rebranded to Convoso. Once we launched the platform, we migrated our customers over. They realized, wow, the results are significantly better than what they had before. And by results, I'm talking about the contact rate. I mean, it
Yeah.
improved significantly. That's really one of the things that we specialize in, is getting the highest contact rate possible. I can talk about it, on and on and on, but
Yeah.
the day we got to this point, and the lesson there is never give up. It's honestly, it works once, as long as you keep going and you move forward every single day. That's what works in business. You just got to keep moving forward every single day.
Amen, brother. And so, couple things there. Just like the cons, you have a family business with your brother, which is cool. I think that's amazing. I try to call that out in the performance space because there's that special bond. Like you two really locked arms and said, "We're gonna, like said, grind. We're gonna hustle." You went through the financial crisis, and the mortgage market obviously got was brutalized over the space. So you got through it, and to me, Convoso is the go-to player now, like you said, in performance marketing for dialer, for performance, for being that front lines to engagement with your consumers. I always picture you guys as the go-to player because you're in, and we're going to talk about that. Like you're in the thick of, uh, you're really in the thick of it. Like your company and your staff, like you have a killer management team and a group, that support staff, and I would say you guys white glove the whole experience, but you guys are really in the know. You know exactly how to make your clients be successful. What do you think in the early stages of in 16 when you rebuilt the business and I had to identify what was like your focus to get out there and make your mark? What was the early stage of that rebrand, that reinvigoration to get out there and win some market share? I remember seeing you out there a lot. Was that really it? Just you being the face of the business and getting out there and hustling and getting new customers?
It was honestly, I would say dialing at scale and with stability, like I talked about earlier, but doing it at scale is a very different story. You have a lot of dialers out there, and
Yeah.
there are a lot of different ones that different price points. But dialing, with 10 agents versus 50, 100, 200, 500 is a whole different ballgame.
Right.
So it was really the ability to perfect the dialing algorithm to do that really well, because there's no way you can verify if a dialer works really well in terms of did somebody answer or not, did it go to voicemail or not. When you're dialing thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of leads, you don't know. So Bobby being our chief product officer, he's a
Yeah.
maniac about perfecting the system when it comes to every single lead being dialed, making sure it goes through, making sure the carrier quality is good, that it's not just any carrier that the call goes through. So there's a lot of pieces to it, but it's really the engine that made the dialer. And then definitely getting out there. We didn't go to our first trade show until, like, I want to say almost 10 years of being in business. You didn't know who
Yeah.
we were, right? When
No,
I joined
I
the
didn't.
council at the time, we're like, who's Convoso? And hindsight, a mistake, it came from a place of you could say back then insecurity of like, oh, we don't have a product that's good enough, so let's not go out to these conferences. But
Right.
it's the greatest thing that could have ever happened to us once we got out there. And really, even if you don't have the greatest product yet, you need to go out there. You need to talk to people. You need to get to know people. You need to connect. You need to network. You need to just put yourself out there. And once we did that, for sure, that made a world of a difference.
I agree. We're a tight knit community, the performance marketing space, and I think just watching you and your team in action at shows, that really, you got to get to know when you're doing a really consultative managed services type business like Convoso. You really have to get to know your client, what the industry pain points are, how you guys are going to execute on that, how you're going to be the leader, how you're going to stay ahead of everybody. So I agree. I think getting out there is key. And speaking of other dialers, like I know people ask you this all the time. What is the main difference between, because this is for somebody that's never ran into you before, what is the main difference between Convoso and 5 9? Because to me, they've been around, they've been in the media. That what's the main difference between you guys?
Yeah, great question. I would put it with three buckets. One, we specialize. Our core focus is performance marketing, whereas 5 9 is really about customer service. And they're a great company. It's just their focus is more inbound customer service type of call centers. And what that means is we proactively solve pain points in the performance marketing industry. An example being that we were the first company that provided a proprietary solution for managing caller ID, in terms of monitoring them to see if they're
Right.
being flagged, right? We were the first to do that because we knew that was coming. We knew that was a problem that was coming. The same thing with, the state TCPA, mini TCPA rules, where
Mm-hmm.
we have built an engine, state trackers, what it's called, where you can set the rules of how many calls per day per state are dialed, because that's going to happen with every state. So we're just
That's right.
proactive around challenges. Second one, I talked about a little bit earlier, but the highest contact rate, that's one of the things that we do. We provide the highest contact rate in the industry. We do that because of the dialing algorithm. The way the dialer dials is very different than most dialers out there. And we have better answering machine detection that's more accurate. So I'm going to get really technical in that regard.
Yeah, please.
More accurately to detect voicemails. And as we know, a large percentage of calls go to voicemail. So the dialer being good at detecting the difference between a real human and an answering machine is one of the most important parts of the dialer that a lot of dialers don't do well. and they flag, voicemails as humans answering, which then your agents get aggravated because they're not talking to people, or vice versa, right? Where it's detecting, or it's not detecting, or it is detecting something that's a human as an answering machine. So that's the second one. And the third part, it's really the level of service we provide, the hands-on, like you talk about, approach we take, the white
Yeah.
glove approach, where we have teams that specialize in certain areas, right from your salesperson to your implementation team to your customer success manager that proactively monitors your account for your contact rate and other KPIs to ensure success. So there's a lot of hands-on approach we take to ensure that our customers are successful. And that's not something you see at Five9. Again, they do
Yeah.
that, but you're probably
Yeah.
looking at much larger customers and they're going to charge you an arm and a leg, but they're not focused on performance marketing. They don't understand this world as much as we do.
Yeah, you're in the thick of it. You're absolutely in the heartbeat, in the thick of it, and I think you also do you think speed is, when we were growing up in the shared lead, or as we call it, comparison leads, it was the evolution of like the mortgage space, education, insurance. Speed was like really critical. First, a lot of brands
Right.
wanted to be first to connect. Do you think brands are still pushing that as much now, or as much as, like you said, touched on caller ID reputation, making sure that your consumer
Right.
you're not calling as too much. Like I know those are things that you guys have probably gone through, but is speed still like a hot button?
It's not talked about as much in general. However, I would say I call it speed to lead at scale is more of how I define it. And it's just the ability to touch every lead
Like that.
quickly enough, not just right. I mean, yes, right away is important, but when you generate more and more and more leads, that adds up. So how fast can you go through all of those leads and go through the ones that didn't answer again without hammering the lead?
Right.
I think that's the
Right.
most important part is how can you do that at scale? And so the dialing algorithm and the way it redials the leads and the strategies that you use is very important. Whereas most dialers don't have a lot of sophisticated capabilities to redial the leads. Just call it again every 30 minutes, every hour, every 2 hours. That does not work anymore. You have to have a well thought out strategy. And there's not a one size fits all. You have to kind of play around with it and see what works for you. So I think that's important where you kind of set a cadence that gets less and less
Yes.
and less aggressive over time. Try it right away, maybe in 30 minutes, maybe in 5 hours, maybe in 2 days, maybe in 5 days. And our dialer has the ability to customize that. So as the lead gets more aged, you get less aggressive, but you don't give up. You just get extremely, more on the passive side. And you do that with every single lead. And you can't do that when you have 100,000 leads in your system over time fast enough to go through it fast enough. So I would say we go through leads faster than every other dialer, and we do it more successfully than every other dialer. That's something that's hard to explain sometimes. What does that mean? We
Yeah.
go through every lead faster than every other dialer because there are dialers out there that will say, "Hey, we'll give you 10 lines or 20 lines."
Right.
If a dialer says, "We'll give you 20 lines," that's a major red flag. You really want to find out why do you need 20 lines? If you're asking for that many, or they're giving you that many lines, it means that their calls are probably getting flagged as like scam, spam, or the call is not being processed by the carrier. So what they do is they give you more lines, so the
Yeah.
wait time between the calls go down because, as we know, the wait time is so important, right? For the agents not to be sitting for too long for every call. So they mask a problem that they have with their dialer by giving you more lines, so that in their eyes the dialer is working well because they're getting connected. But what they're not realizing is you're burning through your list and your leads a lot faster than you would with us. So I would say pay attention to how long does it take to go through your list of leads and how many of them, what's the contact rate on those leads? That's something that I don't think most people look at, to be honest with you.
No, that's a really good point. And I have a history in the contact center space at Double Positive, but so much has changed since I left that business. I mean, I grew up where it was just pound the phone, like you said, just everybody would pound. It was when it was convenient for the company, the sales rep, to just not looking at what was convenient for the consumer. And one of the things I really respect about you and your team is you guys, not only are you at the trade shows listening, but you actually do a specific road show. You go out and listen to your clients, your prospects, your partners. You get to they actually get to participate in the growth and evolution of Convoso, right? Like, and so what I mean, you touched on some of that already here, but like what's fresh? What's the focus right now as we kind of go into finish off or go into Q4 and then going, launching into 2024? Where are you guys, like, where's the mentality for the team?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's for sure one of the things we do, and I believe one of the reasons why we've succeeded is because we talk to our customers and we ask them what it is that they're looking for. So we have a really good finger on the pulse in that regard. And we put our one of our core values is putting our customers first.
Yes.
But I did mention, the state, what we call our state tracker, which
Yep.
really is what it
That's
needs.
huge. Yeah.
That's one, and it's going to be ready to go for all of these different states that are going to start doing this. So you're going to be compliant, and compliance is something we always preach. So
Yes.
we're always looking on innovating in that regard. We just actually made an update to what we call our DX5 engine, and again, it's going to be even more powerful in terms of how fast it dials through your leads and more successfully. Because I don't care which dialer you use and what they tell you. When
Yeah.
you're calling a large volume of leads, there are going to be things that happen with the dialer, whether it's the carrier that you use
Yeah.
or the technology itself. I do not care. It happens. So we
Right.
perfected that even more to be even more powerful to dial through them, and it has shown us an increase in contact rate. So that's something that we've seen. It's interesting without going into the details of why that is.
Yeah.
But the biggest one really is the introduction of Voso.ai, which we'll talk a bit more. It's our conversational AI that is fully integrated into the platform. You can use it together or as a standalone, but that would be the biggest one that we can go deeper on now. Tell you more
That's
about it.
awesome. Yeah, no, for sure. I look, that's I mean the points for managed services and like being there for your clients as they need you, as they continue to grow. We want to keep growing. We want to support growth, right? It's not just keep the lights on. It's like,
Right.
how can you stay ahead of the competition, and how can you make sure that consumers are picking up and answering or engaging so your clients are happy. And I think you guys have just done, again, you guys have, in my opinion, just watching what I've seen you've done over the last couple of years, it's really, really special, man. And I know we're about to head into busy season for open enrollment, AEP, OEP. Tell me how you like, well, one, let's talk about like the verticals that you guys are in, because I think that helps. Performance marketing is pretty broad, right? But when you can touch on that too, because I know you're going to say insurance, health, and if you how do you help clients when they want to scale up like that, when they need to do tremendous scale? Because there's a big difference in your Medicare for the first 3 quarters and when you get
Yeah.
ready for open enrollment.
I mean, it's, having experienced it for so many years now, it's a hot topic that comes up early on in our management meetings. It's coming. Let's make sure we're prepared, and all, which makes
Yeah.
every team being prepared. So, all the way from sales to our customer success to support to engineering to product. I mean, it's a conversation that happens throughout the organization in many different levels, from how do we review our customers' accounts in terms of optimization? Is it currently
Right.
optimized to do well? If not, what can we do to make tweaks? So there's recommendations like that. From the product and engineering side is, let's make sure we don't, release things. We pride ourselves on continuously innovating.
Yes.
We want to be very mindful of how much we release during those periods of time so
Right.
that it doesn't impact anything in terms of performance or anything like that. So those are conversations we have and decisions we make during that period of time. So things like that is really what we look at. And just another one is
Yeah.
introducing buyers and sellers. Everybody's looking for either more leads, more calls. So one of the things that we started doing this year is building this, you could say this lead marketplace, or lead and call marketplace, where we connect and link our customers together to each other. So that's something that
Yeah.
especially that helps. And then everybody wants to maximize this core, obviously, for AEP and OEP.
Yeah.
So it's really about becoming a partner with our
Yeah.
customer.
Yeah, no,
That's
that's a huge added value, right? Because, um that's a nice like added bonus as a cherry, cherry on top, if you may, for being a client, because, you know, there's so much volume fluctuating from each publisher, and the buyer caps can change pretty quickly. So to being able to have that communication, that's pretty rad, man. That's awesome. And you guys are in you're in all verticals, right? So you
Yeah, I
guys,
mean,
yeah.
over the health insurance, so that under 65 ACA, I mean, Medicare, final expense, solar remodeling, mortgage. I mean, obviously not now as much with debt, but
Yeah.
over the past 17 years of having done this, really the platform is customizable so they can meet the needs of
Yeah.
just about any performance marketing type of campaigns that you want to run.
And that's key, because if I'm a brand, I'm a client, and I'm buying leads in a certain category, I want to know I can talk to your team that has expertise, and maybe they can help me with my script. Maybe they can help me in my suggested dial cadence and strategy or communication, what not to say, what to say. So it's cool because, like you said, you're in the thick of performance marketing. And so being able to have that experience is going to really be able to help me as a client feel good that, I know I'm working with a company that knows what they're doing, which a lot of people in our industry claim that, but obviously it's nice to know you guys can back it up, which is awesome, man. So, you talked about some compliance being one of those key differentiators, and I've seen it in action. I was at the Troutman conference where he actually did a rundown of the state TCPA, and I did have a chance to talk to Meg and Lisa about your guys' evolution and release into uh, making that a big point, because we are going to see this come down from multiple states. I think Maryland's coming out the next one, and then they're just going to stack on beyond that. Federally, we're looking at, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I know I lived through the do not call list 04, the mobile provision of TCPA in 13, but everybody in our industry right now, we're staring down the FCC NPRM, which is the consent. As the
Right.
worst case scenario, Mr. Troutman puts it, it's a 1-to-1 consent. We all are hoping that there's some sort of reasonable compromise for comparison shopping, and that we can put a reasonable number, some standards that consumers and the FCC will agree that are a fair communication practice. But what advice do you have, knowing, like I said, you have compliance, you have in-house compliance, you're in the thick of it with all these, reach and CCC. Like, what are some things that you would say from your perspective, advice as companies go out through the rest of this year into 24? We don't have a ruling yet, but just some thoughts or ideas that you have, knowing that you run one of the biggest outbound reach platforms in our space.
First, I want to say you got to embrace the unknown, use it as an opportunity. I think if you can look at it like that, then
Yeah.
your decisions and actions are gonna fall in the right direction. As long as you do that, things are going to be fine. Everyone is going to have to pivot. I don't
Yes.
think you will no longer be able to do things the same way. Things are definitely going
Right.
to change. You can, plan for the worst, plan for
Right.
that one-to-one,
Right.
right? Just assume
Right.
that's going to happen, because worst case scenario, as long as you plan for that, you'll be good if it lands anywhere outside of that. So I would say look at it that way. And if we bucket, separate buyers from sellers, a lot of the buyers depend on third party lead generation and buying leads from third party sources. So I would say is be proactive, get on in terms of generating your own leads, get a media team in place, figure it
Yes.
out. I mean, people are
Yes.
doing it, so you can too. If
Yes.
you haven't been able to figure it out, it's just a matter of
I
investing the
agree.
time and money into doing that. So generate your own leads, your own operated websites. Do that. Talk to people. Go to the shows. Talk to people. Network. See how they're doing it.
Yes.
Community. One of the things that I like a lot about it is that we are very helpful in terms of giving each other advice and tips,
Yes.
things like that. So do that. If you're a seller, I would say that you seller of, let's just call it first, leads.
Hmm.
One of the things that we've seen that our clients have done is the ones that was just selling leads, they started partnering up with a BPO. It could be like a call guru, the call gurus, or prospect
Yeah.
TM, or any of these BPOs that are good at outbound,
Yeah.
where they know how to hire the right agents for outbound. They have experience with the scripts. they know how to run the dialer, so you don't have to learn any of that. And if you're generating those leads, go and partner with those BPOs, start selling calls, look at selling exclusive calls. I mean, that's really where the money is at. So I
Yeah.
would say it's instead of just selling leads the way you've been doing it, start selling calls and really take it in house. And you know what some do is it starts actually going into the business of your customers, start selling insurance. I mean, get that get licensed and go ahead and go that far.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but it's rewarding. So I
That's
would
right.
say learn about the businesses and take that next step, the next level, and you'll be all right.
I think that's great advice. And I'd like to add to that, if I can, is if you're buying comparison leads, shared leads, talk to your talk to the lead generation company, talk to the media company about what their plans are. Like you said, get out there. We're a tight knit community. Ask them, hey, or do you plan on doing a dynamic TCPA? Are you going to sub in, my brand specifically if the filters meet my criteria? Like, we have to plan for the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
We're all cautiously optimistic that there's going to be some sort of compromise, that because we know that consumers don't win when it's a 1-to-1. They're not getting the shopping,
No,
and that's
no, no,
not
no.
good. We want
Yeah.
them to take a benefit. We know as an industry we probably have done bad over the last decade of just going too far. So we're hoping that we can have a compromise. But I think your advice is excellent, man. I think I've seen in action, like I said, some performance marketing companies that were only data only. They have engaged with some of those BPOs. They are building out their own direct exclusive call program. It works. And talk to media companies. Like you said, there's performance marketing media companies that can help you build out your own first party lead gen. So very helpful, Nima. Thank you. Let's step out of the business for a second. What do you do for? You just had a cool trip, but like, what do you do for
Yeah.
fun, man? Are you able to have any fun?
Yeah, I mean, look, as a business owner, I mean, it's business is on your mind
Yeah,
24/7. Even when you're not technically working, you're working. Your
amen.
mind's working on the next step, next goal, next phase, next this, next that, right? That's just how life goes. Um, but one of the things that on a personal level, that I really have focused on over the past, I would say 4 or 5 years, is just becoming more spiritual. We've talked
Yeah,
about this a little bit in the
yeah,
past.
we have. Yeah,
And we all have our own ways of connecting with whatever our higher self, the universe,
yeah,
whatever you want to call it. But for
yeah,
me, what I really, on a personal level, I study the wisdom of Kabbalah, is what it's called, and really a lot of it is about how you give back and share and help others. I'm learning the older I get that that's really
yeah.
what life is about, is just giving back as much as you can, because
It's
you receive
awesome.
by giving. And so that's something I do, and I'm going to start actually mentoring. There's classes going on here in LA, and so I'm looking forward to doing that. Just mentoring a group of people that are new to this program. So just becoming more active in my community here in LA. It's at the Kabbalah Center, is what it's called.
That's
I've
amazing.
gotten more involved in that. Yeah,
That's awesome,
yeah,
man. It's cool that you've come to that like thought process and belief, like as you've grown. Like I said, we by nature you care so much about the growth of your business, but you have to protect yourself. You have to invest in yourself, and by doing that, you're helping so many other people evolve to be better people, better humans, which is great. Our society needs that. So that's awesome, man. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Where I know you guys are out there, we got there's some big shows coming up for Q4. How you guys kind of rounding out the year, because it's busy season, but you got to get out there, and then and even next year too. There's some shows too. So tell us where to be able to find you guys.
yeah. We'll be at Pace next week for those
Yep.
that have not decided to go. I mean, it's really a conference that I would highly recommend everybody to go. You're going to hear really what's going on in the space from all the leaders in the performance marketing industry. So that's coming up. Then we have AFI, the AFI Awards, I believe. Then we'll be at RoofCon, and then in January at Lead Gen World and ASW. So it's just going to hit the ground running again. And as you know, things start into the new year and
Yes.
it doesn't stop.
Yes, and
So
both of us are up for AFI Award. So congratulations on your guys' nominations.
likewise.
Yeah, thank you. And so I'm looking forward to seeing you there. That's gonna be a fun night. I just got a tuxedo, so
Oh, nice.
yeah, yeah, it's a formal event. So I figured, hey,
Okay.
I'm looking forward to
I'll have
seeing
to
you
get
there.
mine. I might go and
Yeah,
get
come
mine.
on, man. Let's do it right. Jeffrey Ross is gonna be there. I mean, that's so awesome. We're gonna have some fun. Um, Thank you, man. I really appreciate you sharing. And I look forward to seeing. I know there's, this next week you're going to be in Charlotte for Pace, and then there's, we kick off the new year at Lead Generation World. It's just these show directors put so much into it. It's great that they've built a forum for us because it's hard. We can't really go see clients in their offices anymore. So being able to get together, it's really valuable. Um, as we wrap up, you touched on this a little bit, and I like to ask each one of my guests, like, because we live in a world where we're all constantly involved in talking about AI. Um, it seems like you guys have incorporated AI now into the business. You talked about that a little bit as you were mentioning the key highlights and features, the focus of the team. But tell us a little bit more about Voso AI. Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, so look, our vision is really to power conversations at scale using self-learning AI, where this first step for Voso.ai is to have our virtual agents just take over as much of the mundane and repetitive parts of a conversation so that a human agent will only need to focus on like the more complicated and important parts of the customer journey. So at the moment, really, whether it's inbound calls that you're getting, they could be from missed calls on your outbound
Right.
side, right? That can flow through a virtual agent that talks to you using a voice, an artificial voice that sounds human-like, so real in that sense to pre-qualify. Or it could be if your dialer is making too many calls and there's no
Yeah.
agent available, instead of dropping that call, it can get to a virtual agent to continue that conversation. It can do that, or a text message to schedule a call. And when they actually make
Yeah.
that call, it can talk either to a human agent or a virtual agent. So just being able to really ensure that there's a conversation always going on, no matter what time of the day it is, that there's always somebody available to qualify and further qualify the consumer through text message or voice channel.
That to me, and been doing this for so long, that's a game changer because we know there's some great companies in our space that have AI SMS. They've built out, they're championing it, that's their core product. But I've never seen under the same roof of a killer outbound dialer stack and communications platform and having AI, whether it's the virtual agents tie in, whether it's SMS appointment setting. I've never seen that under the same roof. And for you guys to get to version one, like we said, we're at now, it's pretty exciting to see how it builds because we know the evolution of engaging with consumers. It may change from a regulatory perspective, but also we want to be more respectful to consumers. We want to not just pound their phone. We want to make it
Right.
easier for them so they can tell us when they want to speak to us. And I think that's key to have this under your roof all together so you make it easier for your clients. So, and that's pretty freaking cool, dude. I'm excited to see how it all plays out. Anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up? Again, your team is amazing. I really love seeing them all out at the show, and I just got to see a bunch of them at LeadsCon Connect.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing I would say is really just this is a message to everybody in our industry: be
Yeah.
proactive around what's happening. Always make sure you have the right counsel in place. Make sure you're staying ahead. I'm surprised that when we go to some of these conferences, how sometimes we don't see enough people show up, and you then get surprised when changes are coming, and it ends up biting you in the butt if you are not prepared. And so, one of the things we've seen with our customers, they tend to be proactive around that, which is when changes come and happen with Medicare, whether it's the changes that happen
Yeah.
there.
CMS.
um
Yep.
yeah, with CMS, they were prepared and ready to go. So this is the same kind of thing. Always be there at the conferences, talk to your counsel, make sure they know what they're talking about. you know um
Yes.
Troutman and I mean do a good job. McMillan Schuster,
Yes.
just having good legal counsel in place and staying connected in the industry is really important. I want to just emphasize that when it comes to being involved with Pace, just be involved and be active, and you'll
Yes.
be set up for success.
Great advice, man. If the companies or people that think they can just sit back and let other people, fix their problems without participating, they're going to get kicked in the gut pretty hard by not putting these best practices, this advice that you've shared today. Really appreciate you coming on, brother. Thank you so much. Good to see you. Can't wait to see you at the AFI Awards. Have an awesome weekend, and thanks again.
Thank you, Joey. Appreciate it. All right. See you soon. Take care.